Okay, let's start the meeting of the Oxford Board of Selectmen on May the 12th. Before we get started, I'd like to read the this into the record that pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, which is General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order concerning imposition on strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. Meetings in the town of Oxford are being conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. And before we get going, I'd like to have a moment of silence or prayer. First of all, for Jack Flynn. Jack was he served as a trustee for the Oxford Free Public Library for many years, and he was the treasurer of the Oxford Little League. I'd like also to remember Linda Fanoff, who was a volunteer as a member of the Tercentennial Committee, and also Rhonda Donnie was a member of the Insurance Advisory Committee and worked in the cafeteria at Oxford High for 12 years. These members of the community are going to be sorely missed. And while we're at it, let us not forget our first responders, especially our town police, fire people, the nurses and doctors that have to work through this hard time, and all those families that have had to put up with this awful disease and possibly loss of loved ones. If we could just take a moment and remember all of them, please. Thank you very much. First item on our agenda is National Police Week proclamation, and I'll read the proclamation into the record. Whereas Police Chief Anthony Sad has said, Oxford's police officers are trained in different disciplines such as firearms, evidence care and custody, community policing, drone deployment, information technology, investigations to include sexual assault, child abuse, domestic violence, and a host of many other areas. Oxford officers execute these assignments in addition to performing one of the most important functions, patrol. The department's members are considered to be first-rate and are dedicated to meet the ever-challenging challenges and demands of this community. All members serve with distinction and courage when they report for duty, especially as they confront this unprecedented COVID-19 crisis. As chief, I am proud and humbled to serve with these fine officers. And whereas these dedicated men and women who have chosen law enforcement as a career play an essential role in preserving the freedom, rights, safety, and security of citizens of Oxford. And whereas the members of the Oxford Police Department provide a vital public service facing the threat of violence and danger and routinely putting their lives on the line to defend ours. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of the members of the Oxford Police Department, and that members of the department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property and protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And therefore, be it resolved that we, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Oxford, call upon all citizens and all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 10 through 16th, 2020 as National Police Week. And this is given under our hands this 12th day of May, 2020 by the entire board and our town manager. And we present this to our one and only great Chief Sad.
Great Chief Sad.
That's right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Manager, it's my honor to accept this proclamation on behalf of the brave and hardworking men and women of the Oxford Police Department. We would like to thank you for all the persistent support that you have given us over the years as we've had basic needs that had to be met. The support that the board has provided to us has just been tremendous. So thank you once again. We appreciate being recognized during this very important week, National Police Week. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd just like to share a news release that the Mass Police Association put out this week regarding this National Police Week event.
Please do. Please do.
On October 1st, 1962, President John F. Kennedy signed into law National Peace Officers Memorial Day, which is celebrated annually on May 15th. For decades now, law enforcement agencies from around the world have converged on Washington, D.C. to honor the fallen and memorialize them on the wall. The week leading up to May 15th is known as Police Week and involved numerous celebrations, parades, and memorial events. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has forced the cancellation of this year's events. We know that during these tough times, first responders across the country were deemed, quote, essential and continued to answer the call, standing on the front lines, ensuring the safety of our communities despite numerous challenges. It is essential that we remember the 146 law enforcement officers who were killed in the line of duty in 2019. Unfortunately, we will not be able to properly pay our respects at the wall this year, but we can make sure that they are not forgotten. Please take a moment this week to remember them, as well as all the officers who have given the ultimate sacrifice. And of course, we will never forget May 22nd, 2016, when the life of Officer Ron Tarantino from Auburn was taken from us. In 2020 already, we have lost 43 officers in the line of duty nationally, and we have lost 27 officers to COVID. The National Law Enforcement Memorial is hosting a virtual candlelight vigil Wednesday, May 13th, tomorrow night, and we invite those who are interested to check out the website at NLEOMF, National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund.org. The words inscribed on the National Memorial could not be more significant than this year. And it reads, quote, in valor, there is hope, end quote. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's dire news to hear those numbers, Chief. You know, and like you said, to have that officer so close to us and from Auburn, you know, it just, you know, kind of puts an exclamation point of the position that all of your officers are in every day that they go to work. And
when something like that, you know, when something like that hits close to home, it kind of turns a light on and it makes us wake up. And of course, the individual who had taken the life of Ron Tarantino was arrested right here in Oxford.
Right. All right. Well, thank you very much, Chief. Board members, anyone else want to say anything? No? All right. Well, thank you again, and give my best to all of them. You know, every time I see them, I try to stop and just say hi and tell them to keep up the good work, because they are doing great work for our town.
Thank you. Your support, as I always do. Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, next item on our agenda is we also have a proclamation for Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, whereas the members of the Emergency Medical Services team are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, as well proven by our Oxford EMS team. And whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas the members of the Emergency Medical Services team engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is most appropriate to recognize the value, accomplishments, professionalism, and dedication of the town of Oxford's EMS team, especially acknowledging their work in the COVID-19 pandemic. And therefore, be it resolved that we, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Oxford, do hereby proclaim the week of May 17th through the 23rd in the year 2020 as Emergency Medical Services Week in our community and recognize the outstanding work of our EMS team. And this is given under the hands on this 12th day of May 2020 by the entire Board of Selectmen and our own Jennifer Callahan, Town Manager. And we present this to our Chief, Lauren McDonald. And again, thank you very much, Lauren.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Town Manager, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the men and women of the Oxford Fire and Emergency Services Department, I'm honored and pleased to accept this proclamation. I'm proud to serve with such dedicated, fine men and women that I get to work with every day, and I thank you and the people of Oxford for that opportunity. We can't do it without the stalwart support of the board, the finance committee, and the members of the community, and you've been there every step of the way through this difficulty and times before. I am deeply impressed with the men and women I work with because in this difficult time, they have been equal to the task. I've been impressed with the fact that over the many weeks of difficulty they faced, there's not been any complaint. In fact, they've strove very hard to continue to not only answer fire alarms and emergency medical calls, but also to enhance the environment that they're working in, and all with the support of the town manager and yourselves, and we really appreciate it. They live up to the motto. It's etched on the side of our water tanker, and the motto is the desire to serve, the ability to perform, and the courage to act. So we thank you for that support. We thank you for honoring their service today, and we are proud that we serve to save. So thank you very much.
Make sure on behalf of the entire board, I'm sure I'm speaking, Chief, that, you know, DMS people are phenomenal. They're people you hopefully never have to use their service, but when you do, they are so professional, just like our police officers. You know, we are very blessed in this town. So I personally, and I'm sure the board, would like to just again, not just proclaim this next week for them, but also to just thank them for their great service, because they do an awful lot of good things for the citizens of Oxford, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll make sure that I pass that on, and also want to congratulate our partners in blue in the law enforcement and thank them for their support, because they're with us on every single call. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I feel the same way. I think we have a good team and a good relationship working here, and I look forward to working with you in the future as well. Thank you.
Excellent.
Likewise.
All right. Next item on our agenda is National Public Works Week proclamation. I'll read that proclamation also. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to the sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Oxford. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public work professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding improving and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is the public interest for the citizens, civil leaders, and the children in Oxford to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest in understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2020 marks the 60th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Therefore, be it resolved that we, the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Oxford, do hereby proclaim the week of May 17th to the 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week in our community. And we call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contribution that public works personnel make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. And this is given on this 12th day of May 2020 by the entire board and our town manager, Jen Callahan. And I present this to Sean Dodvall, our Director of Public Works. And like I said, it's my three best departments that I love in this town. So police, fire, and public works. I love you all. You're, as far as I'm concerned, there is none better in this world. We have the finest, and your guys, just like police and fire personnel, do the same thing, Sean. And I'm sure you can spread that to them also for me. All right.
I will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, Madam Manager. Thank you very much for recognizing public works in the town of Oxford. As you well said, our men and women in our department work very hard delivering these vital services to the town each and every day. And we're very proud to do that. And I thank you very much on behalf of the entire department to receive this proclamation.
Very good. Well, again, just make sure they all see this and know that I'm sure the entire board is in agreement with me that you're doing a great job and just keep it up.
Thank you. I'll be happy to show them. And then while I put my tongue in my cheek, I want to just note that President Kennedy, he made the proclamation for public works in 1960 and not 1962, Chief Sad, for the police department. So I just want to tell you, we've got you beat by a couple of years on proclamation.
That's because your department is better than ours, Sean. I'll accept that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Oh, touche. All right. Very good. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the COVID-19 update. Turn that over to our town manager, Jen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to the board and members of the public. As you know, we're continuing to present the public and this board any updates. And the update with regards to the town of Oxford and where its numbers are coming in for actual COVID cases to date. Since your last meeting, we have increased to a total of 41 cases of residents who've been confirmed positive for COVID-19 virus. In addition, since the last time we met, we had announced our first 3 residents who had passed away due to COVID-19 virus. And today, once again, I'm saddened to report that we had an additional 2 members of our community and previous residents who continue to call Oxford home, to a total number of 5 people we've lost to COVID-19. Once again, we continue to update people, including having provided once a week a number for cases that have resolved. And we're still at about a 50% rate of active cases in this community. On May 4th, some restrictions for retailers were relaxed gently by our governor to allow fulfillment of delivery and mail orders only, things like flower shops and the like. As you know, the governor and the Department of Public Health continue to maintain that although we're moving in the right direction for some of our statistics related to the spread of this virus, we are still not there yet to completely open all non-essential businesses. And I will give us a brief update of what the governor's announcement was today a little bit later. I also want the board to know that there's been a lot of questions about our upcoming annual town meeting, and other communities have also questioned. On May 4th, we did have the Senate Chairman of Ways and Means, Mike Rodrigues, who introduced a bill that we expect to actually go through prior to us more than likely setting our final date for our town meeting. And it has to do with reduced quorums. Anything that typically comes out of a Ways and Means Committee means it's been vetted and it will continue to move through the process. Today, I was on a phone call with the Lieutenant Governor, and once again, they talked that they feel that this new piece of legislation that would impact potential annual town meetings across the Commonwealth is expected with some guidance and statutory relief in the very near future. Also today, the governor had talked about a 4-phased approach to opening the Commonwealth and reopening it. There are 4 phases. The first is what they're considering start, the second cautious, third phase is vigilant, and the fourth is called new normal. So the start, many people are hoping will have some anticipated conversation around May 18th, since the current order for staying home and keeping social distancing and keeping non-essential businesses closed is extended to May 18th. We anticipate that with a new advisory committee that includes town managers and administrators, the advice that they'll give the governor will be incorporated into those 4 phases. And so we anticipate that we'll hear some more based on also the evidence that the Department of Public Health continues to put out. As you know, even over the weekend, our numbers continued in terms of overall deaths to be pretty much consistent, somewhere between 130 and 150 across the Commonwealth, which makes everyone pause because that curve had not really truly dipped. It had to sort of flatten out. And that is something that all public health professionals are watching closely. On May 6th, since our last meeting, we also had to implement an order requiring face coverings in public places where social distancing was not possible, in particular, even when people were going out food shopping and going out to nearby pharmacies. So that order was addressed also by our Board of Health, and our chief, who was still there, Chief Sad, had also participated as we had put together a Board of Health meeting right around the time that this order had come through for actual face coverings and masks in public places. Of course, we have only one Board of Health agent, Tom Purcell, and as valiant as he is and diligent in everything that he's doing, it's quite difficult a task to try to enforce such a sweeping order out in the public. One of the things that Chief Sad wanted to do was to make sure that the formal authorization for enforcement, should that be required and should they need to address certain compliance issues, that they are called in and asked for assistance. The chief thought it was important, and I did too, and so did the Board of Health and Board of Health agent, that they also be designated as enforcement agents for these particular public health measures. That, as you will see in your packet, was actually voted on by the Board of Health, and much to the pleasure, I think, of our Board of Health agent, who now knows that they have a solid team, and the Board of Health understands that we have a great compliance initiative across the town. I will tell you, since this order has gone through, my office and the Board of Health office has pretty much been inundated by multiple calls for compliance-related issues. And both our police and also our Board of Health agent has actually investigated and or worked to make citizens understand and also businesses understand that they have a role to help enforce compliance. And so we're continuing to wrestle with that as we go forward. The other thing that I wanted the board to know is that we're still awaiting any kind of response from the state with regards to school, camp, and recreational closures, and no decisions have been made on that. And the reason why I say that is summer programming and recreational programming obviously is very important to many communities and ours in particular. So that's still, the word is out. And of course, everybody is a little bit more concerned with the new evidence that appears to be emanating about very young children and children up into the age of 13 that are developing what looks like a delayed onset of new symptoms that may be related to this virus. And that has been something that has just recently been hitting all of our media and also our public health divisions across the country. So we will stay tuned on how that will affect not only recreation and school programming potentially, but even our public education divisions. The next item I wanted to bring to the board's attention is something we touched upon at a previous meeting, and that was the issue of potentially rescheduling Memorial Day activities. Due to the pandemic, I'm asking the board to consider either voting to cancel Memorial Day activities and or to extremely modify them in some capacity. In your packets, I did put the original request coming from our honor guard to think about either canceling or postponing. And I also have considered, no, I actually did have in your packet also an email that came through to me by one of my peers in which their local veterans agent had been in touch with the Massachusetts Secretary of Veterans Services, who did make the recommendation that cities and towns not hold traditional Memorial Day celebrations. So this is a decision that the board can make. That's why we're bringing it back up, because obviously we're getting closer to that date. And I know Selectman Sad had spoken to me about it. So I'll defer it to the chair and the board to make that decision at this time.
Okay, what's your thoughts, board members? Cheryl?
I'm of the mindset that it should be canceled, unfortunately, but that's my thought on it. I don't think that his four-phase process of reopening everything back up, I don't think we're going to hit the end of the month and he's going to be, giving the okay for crowds more than 5. I think we should cancel it, but I also think that Terry Cummings had a great suggestion that we actually consider holding it. So I think it was in September. There was the Antietam battle, I think it was. I think that would be something that we could do, but I think for the short term, we should move to cancel this Memorial Day parade.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
you.
if I may.
Yes, John.
I've been in constant contact with the veterans organizations and with Terry Cummins. And I think the consensus is that we should absolutely cancel the Memorial Day festivities, if you will, that being the parade. Obviously, we don't want to be conflicted with the rules that have been set on the pandemic, and we respect that. And the veterans are all on the same page. They feel that the parade should be canceled. What the veterans organizations have decided, along with Terry Cummins and the Honor Guard, is that we will not let the day go unrecognized. And many of the communities across the Commonwealth and across this nation are going to honor those fallen comrades on that day. and they will do it in small groups. We will adhere to the group requests by the COVID-19 recommendations of the governor. And it will be a small group, and we will go to each cemetery. It'll be very brief. We will be placing a wreath, a prayer, and a salute in honor of those who have fallen. We will do it at each cemetery like we do every year. And we will also do it at the memorials on Main Street, the Town Hall, World War I, and the Korean War locations. We don't expect anybody to be present. It's just going to be a private group of veterans. The chief has been contacted. He is willing to give us a police escort. There will be less than 10 people involved in this. It's be representatives of both veterans organizations. And like I say, there will be no public speeches, just a respectful honoring and a military salute as we normally do at each of these sites. And I also want to let the board know that the thousands of flags that fly in each of the cemeteries will be installed prior to Memorial Day. It's quite a task. We usually have the junior ROTC give us a hand. Every veteran that's buried in the town of Oxford will get an American flag placed at their grave. So it is there for Memorial Day. So if that is agreeable to the board, that's what the plan is at this point.
Very good, John. Thank you. Any other board members comments? All right, then I would entertain a motion that we cancel the Memorial Day festivities for this year.
I make that motion.
Second that motion.
Any other comments? I'll call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I will reluctantly vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. We will not hold our Memorial Day festivities this year. Thank you. Thank you, John, for that information. All right, Jen, back to you.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I know that you have an actual hearing that's due to open at 7:30. And so I could postpone the finishing of my COVID update so that you could open up the public hearing.
All right, sounds very good. Then we will come back to that. All right, the time being a little after 7:30, we'll open up the next item, which is a dangerous dog complaint hearing for Ruby at 39 Charlton Street. And this is requested by our Animal Control Officer, Kathleen Kelly Flynn. Before we get started, anybody that might be discussing anything in regards to this issue, I would ask you to swear that anything you say is the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Could I have those people just confirm that? Anybody?
I confirm that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, just you two. All right, thank you. Then let's open it up. Kelly, I'll let you start us off, I think, huh?
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Mhm. On March 26, 2020, I received a report that Ruby, a dog owned by Kim Parker and Kevin Kiley from 39 Charlton Street, was involved in an altercation with a dog named Socks, who's owned by Mr. Joseph Generico of 373 Main Street, and Socks was injured by Ruby. On August 22nd, 2017, Ruby was deemed a dangerous dog by the Board of Selectmen and an order was issued that contained the statement that Ruby was to be securely and humanely muzzled and leashed anytime the dog is outside, even when on the premises of the owner. Mr. Kevin Kiley was walking Ruby without a muzzle when this incident took place, which is clearly in violation of the Selectmen's order. I don't know, I'm not gonna go into the recommendations right now, if you don't want me to. Maybe
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Kelly. And I have to backtrack a little bit because I started off wrong. So if you please just allow me, I want to read the notice into the record. This is given to Kevin Kiley and Kim Parker, and it's about the dangerous dog hearing that is scheduled for today at 7:30 in regard to Ruby. And it says, "Dear Mr. Kiley and Mrs. Parker, pursuant to Chapter 140, Section 157 of the Massachusetts General Laws pertaining to dogs, the Oxford Board of Selectmen will hold a hearing on Tuesday, May 12, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. virtually via Zoom to address complaints of vicious or barking dogs and other disturbances filed by the Animal Control Officer Kathleen Flynn. This complaint is outlined on the enclosed complaint form and attachments and is relative to a dog that is harbored by you. Your presence is required at the hearing to address this complaint utilizing Zoom. Instructions for using Zoom are attached. The Board of Selectmen may make a determination at that time as to any disposition regarding this matter. You have the right to have your attorney present and to appeal any decision made by the Board of Selectmen at the Dudley District Court within 10 days of the date of the hearing. And this is a public meeting, so I would like the owner of this dog, if you'd like to say something first before we go any further.
Yes, I that night did not know my brother took Ruby out of the area, out of the cage. He was supposed to be sitting outside with her. He took it upon himself to take her up the hill and was doing her business. When he came home and told me what happened, I told him, I said, from now on, don't touch the dog, don't bring her out. I will take care of everything with her. Because over 2.5 years, there was not one single incident until that particular night. He's agreed to not do any more with Ruby because he sees now the seriousness of it. I don't think he realized everything that was really going on because he wasn't able to attend the last meeting. And I mean, she's 11.5 years old. She'll be 12 soon. She don't have a lot of years left. I would just like to be able to bring her home and let her, you know, go die with us. I mean, I've had her so long. It's like when I come home, I feel like one of my kids should be here, and they're not. She's just not here. So I'm just asking for the opportunity to take this all into my own hands and take care of her myself with her going out. I only take her in the yard anyways. I don't take her walking around and none of that. And she will be muzzled at all times, even in our yard, if she's allowed to come home. And I'm willing to pay half of Sox's vet bill, but I can't afford, like it said, both dogs were not really under the control of their owners. So I am willing to pay half of the vet bill, but I feel like I've paid a lot of people in this town for stuff, and the last meeting I was attended, some of the things that were said by certain people weren't correct, but it wasn't the time to be debating whether their dog was running out a door or wasn't on a leash. I just wanted to save Ruby's life, as I do right now. And
Okay.
she's been in your care for a while now.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Parker. Is there anyone else here that would like to say something at this time? Yes, Mr. Generico.
Mr. Generico. Yeah, so regarding this situation, I just, I have no interest in having anything happen to her dog. But I am very concerned with the fact that the dog was able to latch on to my dog. The dog would not let go. I tried pulling the jaws apart, to try to get the dog to let go. Nothing I could do. I got a little slice on my hand as well. Just one, I don't want to see it happen to a child. Two, to another dog. I don't know how many instances that this dog has done this. It appears, just in the records that were here, I'm looking at what, five, six times. So I'm a little concerned about that. The dog was definitely on a much longer leash than my dog. And, I know Mr. Kiley, I totally took him off guard because I was coming in from behind him. He didn't see I was there. And his dog ran around him, the backside of him in the scooter, and came across the street, probably about halfway across the street. I was there with my son, pretty traumatic, to witness that. Not much, like I said, not much I could do to get the dog off. Just, hate to see that happen to another dog or a kid. So that's what I have to say.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Generico. Board members, do you have comments at this point from any of the board members? All right, then we don't really have any comments, so Kelly, what is it that you would recommend that the board should do?
Well, my recommendations to the board would be as follows. Number one, that the board adds wording to section 2 of the previous order, stating that Mr. Kevin Kiley will be prohibited from taking Ruby off of the property. Ms. Kim Parker would be the only one allowed to take Ruby for a walk with a muzzle on. Number 2, that the board modifies section 4 of the previous order to add a chain linked fence in the area in the backyard for Ruby to relieve herself under supervision and with the humane muzzle on. That this area shall be added to the existing chain link containment area so that the dog is securely contained on the property. And that any additional violation of the selectmen's order will result in the town taking immediate steps to confiscate your dog and may result in the dog being humanely euthanized.
All right, board members, comments now. We have recommendations from animal officer.
I do have a quick question in regards to the last 2.5 years where there haven't been any incidences. How has the dog been handled? Has the dog been taken out on walks? Has the dog been muzzled during that 2.5 years? And this was just a fluke accident where the dog was not muzzled? Or have you just not been following the order to muzzle the dog when you take it out on walks?
No, the dog had a different muzzle, which my brother ended up losing on me. She was not, I never take her out of the yard. She walks with me around the yard. And Kathy, Kelly brought another muzzle down for me, which she had been wearing right away from that day again. I don't feel comfortable taking her out of my yard, and it's not because of people. She loves people. I think that when she sees another animal, I don't know if she thinks that she's got to be protective or what, but I will not take her out of my yard ever again. She will spend the rest of her life walking around my yard, and it's good enough size that she can get enough exercise to do that. And she will be muzzled at all times. And over the 2.5 years, nothing ever happened because I was constantly the one taking care of her. And then I don't know why this night he felt like he would, I guess it was later and he thought, it was safe to do it. I don't know. But like I told him, I says, every time something has happened, it's been with you. And a couple of the incidents, there were incidents where the other dogs were not chained up or leashed. They just ran off and into the road after her. So of course she, thinking they were coming at her, and my brother, she went after them. But what happened with this last incident is the way the gentleman said. I guess that is just the way it happened. She was going to the bathroom and got, startled, and she went around my brother and went after him, and he did not have her muzzled at that time. So.
All right, thank you. Mike, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, John.
This is to Kelly. How big of an area is this fenced-in area going to be? Do you feel it's sufficient enough for the dog to get proper exercise? Because according to what is being said here, this dog is not going to be taken off the property. So that being the case, is there sufficient area on that property for the dog to get proper exercise?
Well, the dog is almost 12 years old, so I don't think that she needs a lot of exercise. But, as far as they don't have a big yard to begin with. So, even if they just walked around in the fenced in area, even if they fenced in their whole yard, it wouldn't really be that big. So.
But you feel based on the age of the dog and the conditions that have been presented, that area would be sufficient for this dog?
Well, in my recommendations, I did recommend that Kim would be able to take the dog for a walk with a muzzle on. But if she doesn't choose to take the dog off the property, I think that would be fine. Like I said, the dog's almost 12 years old, so.
When I do walk her in the yard, she's out there for a good half hour to 40 minutes at a time. So she's, walking, digging in the dirt, doing her thing. It may not be a big area, but it's like walking a dog in a park. If you keep walking around and around, it's just that I just feel safer with her in her own property.
Mr. Chairman, I have no problem with it as long as all parties concerned agree that this can be done without any negative effect on the animal.
And if I may, John, also, according to the conditions, really, anytime Ruby is outside, that dog's supposed to have a muzzle on, whether it's in the backyard or out for a walk. Correct, Kelly?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And will there be a stipulation that there would only be one person that will be allowed to take this dog out on the leash?
That's what I have on here right now. As far as I know, Kim and Kevin are the only ones that ever took the dog out anyway,
Okay.
but
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, any other comment? Yes, Mr. Generico, you want to turn your mic on? Yep.
Yeah, so just a quick note. I do know that leash was much longer than the 3-foot leash, so that ought to be considered as well.
Thank you. That was in our initial recommendations. Is that correct, Kelly?
yeah,
Yes.
When
yes.
Kelly looked at the leash, she saw it for herself and took Ruby down to the dog pound. She has the leash. She said that it was fine.
If that's the leash she had on that night.
That's the leash she had on. She has 2 leashes, a harness, and then the muzzle on top. So those were the leashes, yes, the only 2.
Okay. All right, any other board members, comments? All right, then at this point, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing for Ruby.
I make that motion?
I second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. I will call for a vote.
Yes?
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes, 5 in the affirmative. The public hearing is closed. So at this point, I would, unless there are any other comments from the board, I would move that we put the 3 recommendations by our animal control officer, Kelly, into effect. That I would say we should give the resident 30 days to put the extra fencing up. But,
Okay.
and how's that sound?
Good.
I do have one question. Right now Ruby is down at the kennel.
Yep.
Is she allowed to go home until they get the fence up?
Mr.
As
Chair,
long as Kim is the only one that brings the dog out with a muzzle on?
I would have, this is just my opinion, I would have no problem for the dog going back home, providing it is muzzled 100% of the time when it's out of that house.
Mhm.
I'm very familiar with that property. So I know they have a little fence now, but I would say as long as there's a guarantee there, it's in our order. And if that dog is not muzzled for whatever reason and outside of that house,
Right.
then there's going to be some serious issues in the future. That's what I would say as a board member. Any other comments from the board?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, yes, Megan.
I would say, I know I was one of the big proponents of the dog being taken initially while we kind of hashed this out. I'm very frustrated by this whole situation because I remember what we went through initially to set this order. But I also have encountered this dog, and I do know that what Kelly says is true, that this is a very sweet dog at the end of her life. And I have a soft spot in my heart for dogs. I would be okay with this dog coming home as long as it is explicitly specified that Miss Parker is the only one that can take that dog anywhere, regardless of if there's other competent adults visiting or anything like that. I think that it needs to be explicit that Miss Parker is the only one that is able to handle that dog from here on out. And that if for whatever reason that changes, we need to reconsider the situation.
And that's what we, excuse me, Ms. Parker, we have closed the public hearing. So at this point, number one, Megan states that exactly that Miss Kim Parker would be the only one allowed to take Ruby out. So that's one of the recommendations I'm I'm putting forward that I'd entertain as a motion. And the second one is that that the dog must be under supervision at all time, even when it's in the chained area in the back while relieving herself. And the muzzle must be on. So that's the thing. The muzzle must be on 100% of the time. And that's, to me, the key factor. And then number three is, if by chance either one of those things are not met, then we could have serious consequences in the future. Does that answer your kind of concern, Megan?
Yeah, I was just trying to kind of reiterate that I agreed with you and that I don't want Ruby to need to be away from home longer than normal because this is probably extremely traumatic for her as well.
Mhm.
But I also just kind of wanted Ms. Parker to understand the severity of the situation as well.
Right.
Yep.
Board members, any other comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please, Cheryl.
you know what, I have to, we've seen this dog before. We have significant issues with the care of this dog. I understand that within the household, clearly there's one who, is responsible for the dog, and there's a secondary person that might jump in every once in a while to assist. But at the end of the day, I can't negate the fact that the dog bit someone, or attacked another dog, I should say. And, I am sympathetic to the dog as well at the end of his life, and I'm very sympathetic to its owner, and I understand those circumstances, but, I'm also, sympathetic and empathetic towards, the people in this town who also have dogs. And, I have some concern that, if this dog truly can be controlled, even by saying that they can be in the house, in the yard with a muzzle, so on and so forth. I think I know where the board will go with this, and I respect that, but, I can't negate the fact that the dog attacked another dog under our orders and disobeyed our orders. And while it was intentional or not, it still happened. And I think we have to remember that. So those are my thoughts on it.
No, and to your point, Cheryl, personally, I agree with you 100%. Because it's a scary thing. It had to be very scary for Mr. Generico the day that happened, because their dog is under attack like that. And, so, but on the other hand, I am an animal lover, as I think people know, and I'm looking to stretch it as much as we can, but be very affirmative that if these recommendations are not met, that gloves are off next time, as far as I'm concerned. That's the way I would think of it. So, any other board member comments? All right, then I'm going to do this two ways. I'm going to first entertain a motion that we add the wording in section 2 of our Selectmen's August 22nd, 2017 order, stating that Miss Kim Parker would be the only person allowed to take Ruby off the property with a muzzle on at all times. That's the first motion I would entertain.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
All right, are there any comments on that motion? Then I'll call for a vote.
No.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. That's 4 in the affirmative, 1 no. So that section will be added to our order, August 22nd. The second motion I'd like to add to here is to move that we add the wording to section 4 of the same order of August 22nd. And this would be that a chain link fence area in the backyard of 39 Charles Street is added for Ruby to relieve herself under supervision and with a human muzzle on.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Comments?
Yes.
Yes, John.
I believe there was a recommendation by the animal control officer that there is a time limit on putting this fence together. Should that be in the
Yes.
motion?
Yes, I think I originally stated we should probably give her 30 days. Does that sound appropriate?
Yeah.
John?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does
Okay.
Kelly feel comfortable
Kelly?
with that?
Yeah, 30 days would be, I think,
Okay.
sufficient. Yeah.
So we'll add that to the wording also. So we're talking about adding a chain link area in the backyard at 39 Charles Street for Ruby to relieve herself under supervision and with a humane muzzle on. And this should be accomplished within 30 days of this. Okay. Do I have a motion and a second on that?
I think I made the motion, but I'll make the motion again.
Okay, thank
I'll
you.
second it again.
All right. I'm sorry. Well, we just added that little bit, so that makes it official. All right, I'll call for the vote.
No,
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. It's 4 in affirmative, 1 no. So they will add the chain link in the backyard, and Ruby must have a muzzle on while relieving herself. And I would entertain a motion that we allow Kelly to send the dog home until the fence is put in. But within 30 days, if the fence is not put in, she will take the dog back.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Any comments? Then I'll call for a vote.
No,
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 4 in affirmative, 1 no. So we will allow Ruby to go home. But again, I can't insist more that anytime that dog leaves that house, it must have the muzzle on. Correct, Kelly?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Then at this point, we're all set. We thank you all for adding your comments and helping us with this decision tonight. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, so I guess we'll go back to update by our town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I left off in making sure that we keep providing our immediate community, our business community, with the ever-changing, almost weekly opportunities to try to assist these small businesses that have been shuttered because of the virus that we're all confronted with. Recently, there have been some empowerment grants that have come out for small businesses. And today, the United States House of Representatives has indicated that there is going to be another round of assistance to our smaller businesses, and also potentially $1 trillion that will come to both states and local municipalities in form of direct aid. So I anticipate that we're going to continue to see, and I will communicate with our business community that we have through both our Facebook and also our website on any opportunities for small businesses to be able to be assisted. The next item has to do, and I see our clerk is here, and I'm pleased with that. We did say we were going to return to the issue of setting our annual town election. I'm recommending that the board vote to set that date for the annual town election for Tuesday, June 30th. In your packets, you will see some information that our clerk has put together by corresponding with a neighboring, well, not close neighboring, but another clerk, which you can see a number of communities that have not only delayed or pushed off their or postponed their elections for the annual town elections, but they also have also changed the polling hours. Now, I know we briefly talked about that in another COVID update, but I wanted to provide you as the board with enough opportunity to give notice to the public. And also our clerk needs that notice as she is finalizing the ballots that would be presented. So with that, I will defer it to the chairman to get the pleasure in the reading of the board, and any questions they may have, they can direct to myself or the town clerk.
Right. Board members, any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, yes, John.
I don't see that document that the manager was referring to that she got from the town clerk about other communities. It's not in my packet.
So I'm sorry, I don't know why it's not, but I had forwarded it in the afternoon. It did come late from the clerk this afternoon. I can tell you that the number of communities that are listed, there's a lot of them that haven't necessarily, and this was more than a week ago, right, Lori, that the Walpole clerk had assembled it. There's a number of communities that are going anywhere from 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon for potential polling changes to 10 in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The town of Douglas looked like they might even be changing their hours till late in the afternoon and early evening. A lot of them are going from like 10 in the morning to an early end for the polling hours instead of being from the full hours that we would normally do. The one thing that the clerk and I did speak about, and I asked her to look back, and this was just for my own edification in case the question came up from the board, and looking at the overall percent participation and what the breakdown is, pretty much for annual town elections, which are very different than state and federal elections, the predominant percentage of people voting are people from the age of 70 and up for our annual town elections. So if you are going to make modifications to polling hours, I would suggest that we also consider that demographic. And I know that Lori Kelly can also add that as well, if she has any other further comments.
Question.
Yes, go ahead, John.
Where do we get those figures from, that percentage of voters that come to a town election 70 and up? Where'd that come from?
Lori, you can answer that.
Laurie?
It's there.
Laurie, your microphone.
How
There we
about,
go.
my God, thank you. I started compiling the election statistics back in 1994 when I started as clerk. And I break them out, you know, depending on if it's a town election, a special state primary, a special state election. So you didn't, I guess you don't have that email, John, but the last couple of years, last year was our worst year ever. We had a 2.2% turnout in 12 hours, 198 voters. The 2 previous years, we had 16%, which is just under 1,500 voters. We haven't had over 20% turnout in the town election since 2005, when we had an override for the schools. So the percentage is pretty dim for our town election turnout, but that's my calculations that I started.
Okay, where'd you get the voter age of 70 and over?
Oh, I looked them all up today. So that's just for last year's election. I'll give you all of the numbers. I broke it out in smaller groups. 18 years old to 29 years old, there were 12. 30 to 39 years old, there were 16.
40 to 49 years old, there were 25. 50 to 59 years old, 41. 60 to 69 years old, 39. 70 to 79 years old, 48. And 80 to 93, 17.
Okay. You have to take into consideration that those figures that you're gathering are figures based on uncontested races.
Right.
So the statistics won't necessarily hold true on a contested election, which we have for a major office, the office of Selectmen, and we have a debt exclusion, which also is on that ballot. So that is going to increase the interest in the election. So those figures that you gave me, as far as I'm concerned, should be thrown out because it's not comparable to the situation that we're going to be facing on this election, based on the fact that you have a major contest and a major question on the ballot. And as far as the hours are concerned, and this is my personal opinion, I have never remembered a town election since I've been on the board that we reduce the hours on an election. We are creatures of habit, unfortunately. The same people come out to vote year after year after year. You can almost tell who they are, what time they're going to come to vote. And the fact of the matter is, there are different situations in every household of voters. Some people don't work a 9 to 5 job. Some people work different shifts. Some people have concerns that they're working and they have someone taking care of their children. So, or they're elderly and they expect their older siblings to pick them up to take them to vote before the poll in the morning, before they go to work, or after they come home from work. So, being creatures of habit, I have a concern that there's a suppression of vote that could happen by us reducing the hours. I feel that every person that wants to vote should have the opportunity to vote. It's been tradition that the polls have opened from 1 hour till 8 o'clock at night. And being creatures of habit, I would be opposed. And that's my own personal opinion. I think everyone ought to have the opportunity to vote. And as far as, being in conformance with the COVID-19, the distance factor, the longer you spread it out, the easier it is to have the distance. And I don't expect that there's going to be a super abundance of people that will come out to vote, but there's certainly going to be more people come out to vote this year than they have in the past several years, based on those two factors that I've presented earlier. The top position on the ballot and a very important money question.
Well, John, I hear what you're saying, and I know I've talked this over with our town manager and Lori, and I just, especially this year, I think with all that's going on, I'm looking at our workers that work these stations, and just protecting them and giving them. I was thinking personally, I was thinking somewhere around 10, 11 to about 6. I thought would be good hours, and that way there you get the morning time for those that are used to going in the morning, and then you got the people that can come after work. And we still don't know what the work schedule is going to be there even in another month. So, but that I was kind of leaning to reduce it. I understand what you're saying, but just like you and many others, I've been voting for a very long time, and it seems like we go in there and there's nobody hardly there. So you're getting stragglers coming here and there. So, which is a good thing for the COVID. I agree with you there. You get your distance, but it makes for a long day for our workers and for our clerk and her helpers and things. So I'm personally in favor of the date, setting the date, and I'd like to see it reduce in the schedule, but I don't know what the rest of the board, again, would like to say. Mike?
Yes, I kind of have a three-part question real quick. First one is, what is the reason that we are looking to reduce the hours again for? Is it because of the lack of participation, or is it because of the COVID-19?
It's a combination. Yes, because of the COVID-19, and also the legislation that was passed allows voters to vote early by mail. That's no excuse, whereas absentee by mail, and we're not doing absentee in person, but absentee or early voting by mail. That's special. We don't normally do early voting at all for a town election. And the other part of it is that not last year, because I don't even want to count that one either. The last two, 18 and 17, we had a 16% turnout. In 18, we had a capital exclusion and an override on the ballot. And in 17, we had a 2.5 override for the schools. And we had just under 1,500 voters each year. Divide that out by 12 hours. So I think we can accommodate, even if 1,500 voters showed up in 4 precincts that day. I think we can still accommodate the social distancing. I do intend to ask for a code red to alert the voters that they've got to wear a mask. They're welcome to bring their own blue or black pen. So anything we can do to minimize the exchange of things. Obviously, we have to exchange ballots, but it's some of the things that we're looking at. Does that answer your question?
It does, yes. And does it seem that the majority of the other communities, because I'm looking at the list here, and a lot of them seem to have some pretty reduced times. Are we thinking that they're doing the same thing for that reason?
Well, certainly some are reducing, whether they have a contest or not. Some had comments about whether they might have a debt exclusion. I think 12 to 4 is the minimum. You have to open the polls by 12. I think on the one the town manager mentioned, Douglas, I'm going to guess that's a typo because they can't open at 4. Not my report. So they have to open at 12. By 12. They have to be open for 4 hours. So you see on this report that a lot of them are 12 to 4 or 12 to 6. I thought 10 to 6 would be pretty good because you can capture some of the morning crowd, just maybe not as early, and they can still be home by lunch. And the 6 o'clock could accommodate people that work till 5. I think some of the younger crowd will probably vote early by mail instead of in person. I think the trend right now is to vote by mail.
Okay. And then you, for the most part, answered my final question, which is what are the hours that you're recommending, which would be, you're recommending 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.?
I think 10 to 6, 9 to 5 would work. The polls would still be open for 8 hours.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
All right, Mike, thanks. Anyone else? Cheryl, yes.
So I'm in agreement with John on this. I think it's a slippery slope to reduce hours when it comes to voting. I think voting is, I think that the town has always done an excellent job with their voting and how they manage it and how they deal with it and the extended hours. I think voting is the basis of this country. And I think that I understand we have a virus and we have a lot of health precautions that we need to take. However, I don't think that's going to be as big of an issue. I think the bigger issue is probably getting people who will work the polls for that extended period of time. But I don't know. Legally, as far as I'm with John on this, I think the hours should remain the same. And I think that we've got 2 questions that really are prevalent to what we're going to be doing in this community. And I can just see people now, again, not knowing when we're supposed to be voting and whatnot. And the other thing is that I'm not thrilled with the 30th. And I don't know if that date is absolutely cast in stone, but that weekend is the 4th of July. And I understand that we're all under lockdown, and vacations are, but it's a big vacation. It's a big vacation time. And I think a lot of people are going to be out of town, hitting the beaches and things like that. And I understand we have that mail-in option, but I don't know. I'm a little concerned about getting that mail-in option notice out to the people. I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. I understand it, but I'm not a fan with it. I'm with John on this one, I think.
Laurie,
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Laurie, aren't we kind of like down to the nitty gritty with that date because of you have to give certain notices by within a certain timeline?
There's a couple things. So June 30th is the very last day we could have the election without some form of legislation, special legislation. And that could be, a statewide thing. Who knows where we'll be by then. So yes, to answer your question, we have overseas voters that vote by email. And the federal law requires those ballots to be sent 45 days before the election, which would be this Saturday for June 30th. The other thing was we had talked about possibly having town meeting on maybe the 24th or 17th. And I know that's still kind of up in the air right now, but if we move it back a week, then we would have election on the 23rd and town meeting on the 24th. So.
All right, thank you, Laurie.
Okay.
Any, Megan, do you have a comment or are you just?
No.
Okay.
If that's all right. While I certainly mean no disrespect to anybody, I think that it would be irresponsible of us not to push this out as long as possible. We are still in the middle of this pandemic. It is not going away. Warm weather is making people think that they can go outside and kind of forego this mask order. So I unfortunately think we're going to see a spike before it gets better. I don't really think it's started to get better yet. It's started to level off, which is wonderful, but it hasn't really started to go down yet. I think for the safety of our election workers, we owe it to them to go as late as possible. That also being said, while yes, I completely agree that everybody should be afforded every opportunity to vote, I think that this time with the option of the mail-in vote, we are really even more so affording that ability to vote because people can do it from the comfort of their own home without having to go out and actually interact with anybody. I think that reducing the hours would be best for our election workers, for the safety of everybody in general, because I don't think that as a town, we should be encouraging people to go out. I think we still need to kind of maintain that social distancing as much as possible. So I think that we kind of have a duty to our residents to do this for them. I think if they didn't have the option to vote from the comfort of their home, I would feel a little bit different, but I don't think that we're excluding anybody's ability to vote by shortening the hours. And I think a 10 to 6 does still speak to most people's schedules because it does accommodate the 9 to 5. It does accommodate the people that work kind of funky shifts. So I'm of the opinion that we should push it back and we should somewhat limit the hours as well.
Can I just add a comment to that too, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
June, anytime in June, in the school gyms, wearing a mask all day is going to be pretty stifling because the gyms are not air conditioned. So we have gotten in the past warm elections, we've gotten some blower fans, floor drying fans for their air circulation. But one of the things that we run into with anything like that is the limited number of outlets. Like their gyms, they don't have a lot of outlets, and the scanners, the tabulators, cannot be plugged in with anything else, not even the lights for the booth. So, June, anytime, any date you pick, the 23rd, the 30th, it's going to be warm, and they're going to be wearing a mask. So it should be an interesting day for the workers that will be available.
All right. Well, let's do this in two motions. I'd entertain a motion that we set the town election for Tuesday, June 30th.
I make that motion.
I second that motion.
All right, any comments? I'll call for a vote. I'm calling for a vote, Cheryl.
Yes, I know.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. We have set June 30th for our town election. Now I would entertain a motion to have our polling hours for that day from 10 in the morning till 6 in the evening.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments? I'll call for a vote.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
And I'll vote yes. That's 3 in affirmative, 2 negative. So we will have voting that day from 10 to 6. All right. Thank you, Laurie. And
I just have a couple other things too,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
So you'll want to have a notation made on the election warrant by your office that it was postponed in accordance with Chapter 45, section of the Acts of 2020. I'm assuming that you're authorizing your office to do electronic signatures on the warrant. And they can be
Yes.
posted, the election warrant can be posted now. It has to be posted 7 days before, but it can be posted now. And if the buildings are closed, we can post on the outside. The voter registration, just by way of information, is 10 days before, which falls on a Saturday. So voter registration will be on Friday, June 19th, from 2 to 4 and 7 to 8. And I had mentioned earlier that I'd like to have a code red alert done, which would include the date, the hours, asking voters to bring their own pen if they want to. We'll have pens, we'll have sanitizer, but they're welcome to bring their own as long as they're blue or black. And that they should be wearing a mask unless that order is lifted. I don't know that we can force them to wear a mask if the order is lifted, but it's suggested. And I had mentioned to the chairman the other day that I have ordered some unfortunately named sneeze guards, but they're a plexiglass stand. You've probably seen them in some stores. So I've ordered them to use at the office for starters, if we reopen to the public soon, and also enough to use for the election workers at the polls. So they'll have a plastic stand with a little slot in the bottom to slide the ballot to the voter. So I've already ordered those from a local company in Southbridge. So I just wanted to point those few things out. That's all I have.
Very good. That's that you don't need a vote on that. That's
No,
just
no,
stuff
just for
that-
your information.
Yep, so that we can make sure that Jen gets that stuff done as far as those are concerned. Yep.
Great. Thank
Thank
you.
you. No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Jen, I think we're back to number 9.
Yes, the next item has to do with the fact that the board had been proactive prior to the adoption of legislation that allowed us to push out our tax bill due date to June 1st, and that we had taken a vote also to waive interest and penalties. And tonight I'm asking the board, even though the due date was June 1st, the legislation allowed towns to push out the waiving of interest and penalties until June 29th for those payments that were due on June 1st. So I was going to say to the board that I would recommend helping the local taxpayers at this time by voting to extend the waiving of interest and penalties until June 29th. That would be the absolute latest date that we could. And so far our collections have been on target. And so I believe it for those people who may be experiencing some hardship in being able to have an extra 29 days to be able to make that payment without having interest and penalties. So I'd make the recommendation that the board extend the waiving of interest and penalties until June 29th because of the COVID, obviously.
All right, I'll entertain a motion that we extend the time period to June 29th for issuing any interest or penalties for the tax return.
I make that motion.
Second that motion.
Any comments? Call for a vote.
Yes?
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. We'll push those penalties out to the 29th.
Thank you. The next item I just wanted to bring to the board's attention because I know it's been of strong interest to all of us about how we're actually sustaining many families who are finding it difficult to meet a basic necessity, and that is food assistance. And so recently, John Nealon from the Oxford Ecumenical Food Shelf had reached out to me and said that they were very appreciative of the fact that we in our board meetings and on our website had really brought attention to local families if they needed assistance to actually contact the food shelf. And so during the month of April, John had informed me that they had over 309 visits representing 124 families, and that many of these people were using the food shelf for the first time. And they were saying they had heard about it through our meetings and our advertisements that we've done in terms of social media. And so I wanted to congratulate the food shelf and also make sure that people know that they can still reach out to the food shelf at 987-1062 by telephone or by contacting them by email, oxfordfoodshelf@hotmail.com. You know, obviously, as long as this protracted stay-at-home order continues and while people are experiencing unemployment, the food shelf is a local pantry. Not every community has that, and they're doing terrific work. And every Thursdays, they're giving out actual groceries to people. So they've been doing a terrific job, and my hat goes off to them. The next item is another item that I would like the board to consider formally adopting. I've been in touch with, in communication with the superintendent of schools, who is in the midst of planning upcoming graduation events, despite the fact that we have a major pandemic going on. We spoke about how the Board of Selectmen might be also able to participate in offering their formal congratulations, and potentially in the form of an official proclamation that would be presented to each of the high school graduating seniors. They are working out the details of whether they'll do a drive-up kind of graduation ceremony to be able to honor the actual official act of extending the diplomas to the students, or whether they'll actually do a later date full ceremony, potentially late summer. But I don't know what they'll choose, but regardless, tonight I was hoping the board would send their official congratulations for formal proclamations to each of the graduating students. And there's, you know, approximately a little bit under 100 of those.
I would entertain a motion that the board sign congratulatory proclamations for every one of the graduating seniors.
I make that motion.
Second that motion.
Any comments? I would make one comment. Can we add to the motion also that these signatures of ours be done electronically?
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, later on in my update, I actually have you collectively make that vote so we don't have to do it each time. So, but yes, I would add that to this until we take that vote under the town manager update. Thank you.
Okay. All right, then we'll just stick with this motion then. Any other comments? I call for a vote.
Yes,
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in affirmative, we will send those proclamations. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. The next item has to do with something that, as I've been meeting with our finance director and our department heads, and as we've been contending with this much longer pandemic situation than we had anticipated. Many of you are aware that there are some surrounding communities that recently furloughed town employees because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And likewise, we have been monitoring and incurring some significant unanticipated expenses and costs at the end of the year that were not necessarily included in our budget in the spring of last year. We also are contending with really big unknown budgetary revenue impacts, with the state not even setting its revenue consensus figure or hosting their own debates for setting a actual budget in which we'd have a better idea of what kind of assistance that we could count on going forward. I wanted to let people know that we had maintained all of our employees on the town's payroll for over 2 months, hoping that we would see a more clearer light at the end of the tunnel. As you know, we're no different than any other community, and we have been seeing some historic potential reductions being forecast. I've included in your packet that the Senate Chairman of Ways and Means has put out some historical context along with the Mass Taxpayers Foundation. And that is something that we're looking at very closely as we anticipate not only setting our own budget at an annual town meeting, but how we're going to, for the balance of the fiscal year, be able to make sure that we can close our books and do it with fiscal stability in mind. Having said all that, there has been a need to look at both budgetary and personnel adjustments. And I am letting the public know that we had taken a very hard and difficult decision to furlough 26 employees at this time. That does not mean they are terminated employees. And for those people who have health insurance, we're going to maintain that. But it means that we're trying to share this burden that we have for completely closed municipal buildings where we are having difficulty being able to maintain not only the work environments for people, but also concern about the overall financial pictures that we're going to be faced with. And I wanted to make sure that not only our board was informed, but the public was informed. Each of these employees received personal phone calls from their department head, myself, and human resources. And the majority, I'm saying almost 100% of them understood what we were trying to do, and we're navigating with them in terms of unemployment as we speak, and also any other assistance that we can supply them. The next item is to let you know that in light of some of the furloughs that have occurred, the Department of Public Works, under the purview of our DPW director, had initiated this past Monday a full plan in which we had a return of our DPW workers who were also working on a modified schedule of so many people on and off, depending on which weeks their work load had required. As you can see through the memo, there are a number of steps that our DPW director and our facilities director and also our supervisors have taken to assure that we're consistent with our observance for social distancing guidelines, changes in the way that the employees come in and out, not eating together, not using common break rooms, sanitizing each vehicle at the end of a shift, operating one vehicle, one person, and reasonably accommodating that, and a number of other things. And so far, that has been working, and I know that those workers are happy not only to be back to work, but to be able to actually address projects that might not have been done before because they're maintaining social distance and taking a number of smaller projects to get to while we wait on some of the larger construction projects. Chief Sad was also here this evening, and as you will see, because of the pandemic, he was also, along with Sergeant Gurnett, featured in an article at the Telegram and Gazette that looks at the whole notion of enforcement and enforcement related to traffic infractions, and that are not unsimilar to other communities, even though we've had grants that have helped us look at enforcing speeding and the like. Some of those things have been put off because of the fact that we're trying to let officers use their discretion in not being put in harm's way as much as possible. And so we're hoping we can resume some of those grant activities. But again, we're living in a very different time, and that's why some of these things that you're hearing are not just affecting us, they're also affecting other communities. You may be hearing also from citizens that participate in our Oxford Little League. I know that there has been reaching out to my town office and also the Board of Health with concerns that people had about what they thought was a communication that the Oxford Little League was going to be opening on, I want to say, May 11th. We've had an outreach to Phil Davis, the president, and also we've had communications with our Board of Health. They are understanding that they're waiting for permission for the commencement of their program. They're hopefully thinking maybe they sometime in June, but that original communication which had gone out, which might have alarmed a few people, was really based on waiting to hear what the real orders would be from the state. But again, that's just trying to be responsive to citizens that are trying to get some confirmation even from the town if we knew. And so we've given that confirmation to them. The next item is once again to feature the donations that are so important to our community. Home Depot has once again stepped up and donated boxes of gloves, hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, and surgical masks to our community. And an individual named Joseph Below has done something kind of unique. He's donated several gift certificates to local restaurants to our Oxford food shelf in hopes that some people may be able to take advantage of that, not only when they open, but also for drive through or pickup. I also have included a memo that came in late today, and the only reason I'm doing that now is because it looks like the decision might be made before our next meeting, in which the memo is coming from Justin Ledoux, the business manager at the Oxford Public Schools. And as you know, they have been providing both breakfast and lunch in a consolidated manner, operating from one school. And of course, that represents some quite long lines. They have been actually providing that food assistance since this pandemic and the emergency orders had been put in place. And so we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of meals that have been being provided. So they believe that in order to make it easier for the distribution and to perhaps speed it up, that if they actually broke it apart and distributed in maybe 3 areas that were all still town properties, that they might be able to enhance the ability to get the food to the students and their families more quickly. And so, as you can see, that's a recent proposal, has not been vetted by our Board of Health agent. We will look at the distribution and the same standards we put in place over at the school when it was the main place. There was some discussion about providing potentially to another site that was not town owned. And I think that has been postponed at the moment because we don't have real control over what happens at that particular site, but there are a number of students that are relying on this. So what we're trying to do is bring it closer. And if you look at the sites for drop off, you can see that they're actually meant to be able to be spread across the town, whether it's at the Little League field down at 672 Main Street, the Oxford Community Center, and also the Chafee Elementary School. So as soon as the Board of Health agent takes a look at that, I'm sure we'll be able to hopefully approve that and move that along. And that would conclude the Oxford COVID update for this board meeting. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. So don't stop, just keep on going to your manager's report.
We have a number of votes to be taken. The first one regards to minutes, the request of the board to vote for the minutes of April 28th. All the members were present at that time.
Entertain a motion to approve the minutes of April 28th.
I make that motion.
Second that motion.
Call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. Those meeting minutes are approved.
The next item has to do with the actual changing of your next Board of Selectmen meeting date. Normally, it would have been scheduled for May 20th, immediately after what typically would have been our annual town election at 7 p.m. As a result of the election now being postponed to the next date, it might make more sense to have that meeting for May 26th, and whatever the pleasure of the board is at this time to make that change, certainly would adhere to that.
Entertain a motion to move the selectmen's meeting to May 26th.
I make that motion.
Second that motion.
Comments? Then I call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. We'll move that meeting to the 26th.
And similarly, Mr. Chairman, the meeting that would have been scheduled for June 2nd is very close to May 26th. So we would ask that maybe it makes more sense at this time to look at moving that to June 9th at 7 p.m.
And I would entertain a motion to move our June meeting to June 9th.
I make that motion.
Second that motion.
Comments? Then I call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. We'll meet on June 9th then.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as true to I had said earlier, there is the agenda item of wet ink signatures as a function of the office. Since we've shifted online, and even though we have been saying we vote to authorize the board for each type of vote to use electronic signatures or to allow you to on behalf of the board, it would be good actually to vote to authorize the selectman administrative assistant to use your electronic signatures for all items that have been voted on affirmatively at your meetings until such time as you choose not to do that in the future.
And entertain a motion to allow our administrative assistant to use electronic signatures for affirmative votes until we can safely go into the town hall to do our regular signatures.
I make that motion.
Second that motion.
Any comments? Yes.
Dennis, I just have a quick question. I just want to confirm the signatures are only, the automatic signatures are only to be used on items that are approved on during the Board of Selectmen meetings. Is I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything that we have voted on and affirmed
Okay.
our vote. Yes.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. We'll do that till we can go in.
Mr. Chairman, the next item I had originally was 33B transfers. I had met recently with the finance director. She's asked to actually not do these this evening. There've been 1 or 2 items that had come about that might change slightly those figures, and these would be normal 33B transfers that would occur through the vote of both the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. So I'm going to pass that over for this evening. And we'll take it up at a future meeting once the more definitive figures have come in. The next item is just to update the board that for Carbuncle Drive, we've worked in my office pretty expediently to try to make this actual real estate transaction close. As you know, many of the tax title attorneys and the like have been moving out a lot of their dates. We were able to find through our legal counsel an opportunity to have tax title attorney move the closure date and to actually finalize the actual purchase of the property. And now it's scheduled for May 29th, whereas before last time I didn't really have that definitive date in front of you, in which case that 4 Carbuncle Drive will then become town-owned property. The next item is just to let you know that the planning board does not have any upcoming meetings slated for the month of May. And I will let the board know when they take up meetings once again. Of course, many of those kinds of meetings that they have relate to extended permitting and review. And I think that's one of the reasons they don't have any meetings for this month. And also, I just wanted to give a shout out and let the board know that despite being in the middle of a pandemic, having done this major conversion in the office of the assessors, having been able to get our billing out in the middle of a pandemic, and all of those things, we have received a number of compliments to our assessor's office. And I've included that in your packet where it speaks to the true customer service nature of the people who are employed by the town of Oxford. And, you know, with everything else going on, I think we take it for granted sometimes that people just are doing their jobs, but it is nice to hear, you know, when people are doing their jobs and going above and beyond, and the public is recognizing that. And so I thank the assessor, Chris Pupka, and in particular, Janine and Vicky in the office for doing an outstanding job in coordinating all of these transitions that have taken place this year, and really, you know, adequately addressing even the middle of a pandemic when other things might have been at their fingertips. We're still experiencing, you know, a different way of doing business, and that has led to us actually trying to provide greater outreach and I think a more personal touch when we can. And that goes across a number of our departments. But today I wanted to give the shout out to the Assessors Board. And that would conclude my town manager's update.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your information. We go to Selectmen's requests, and we have our wonderful Cheryl LeBlanc is our first request.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Madam Town Manager, a quick question as we're into, you know, week 8, I think it is, maybe even week 9 of the pandemic. You had made a comment that we've had some unanticipated expenses as a result of this. Are you referring to like the DPH expenses and so forth, or have we incurred some significant expenses elsewhere?
We've incurred other expenses. You know, right now our Board of Health agent, he was contracted to do 2 days a week. He's operating on a 7-day work week schedule. We brought on public health nurses to do our contact tracing and are doing a fabulous job that way. We've incurred additional expenses through our facilities departments for a number of not contracted, but vendor required services. We've incurred expenses through the police department and our fire departments for not only outfitting our fire station to accommodate our staffing there, but also in our police department creating a safer environment where they put in the I call it the intercom system and the lock system that didn't exist before. I could go on with a number of things, including our designated ambulance drivers and also bringing on that open shift position early than we anticipated. So there are a lot of things. And of course, then there's also expenses from, you know, masks to gloves to anything that we were looking at initially when we were being forced to think about not having certain resources. So whether it's air filters, you know, that we're putting in, whether it's actual things that the clerk and all of us are starting to identify as how we're going to eventually phase in coming back into town buildings. All of these things have been additional expenses.
Gotcha. In regards to the furloughs, was every department affected, or was it just a handful of departments?
No, I think in my memo that I had sent out, it was a cross-section of departments, particularly departments in which people are in buildings that are completely closed and not operational to the public. Also looking at departments where we already had people staggered where they really weren't coming in on a weekly or even bi-weekly level. They might have been able to do some work remotely, but the majority of it, once we started to try to see how this was working out, they might not have been able to do it. So, whether it was the library, our community center, our senior center, it was looking in internally in the town hall as well. So no, there is a large number of people. And, the goal here, hopefully, is to bring people back in those positions, but none of us knows what that landscape is going to look like. And my biggest concern is how long do we keep doing that with the unknowns of our finances and also with the unknowns of whether we're actually going to have the same exact services when we come back. Some of these things could be protracted out for months from now, and we don't know what that situation will be. But no, it was a number of, I will tell you that none of the furloughs took place in our public safety sectors.
I only asked this question because I know you've been talking with the superintendent. Has she given you any type of idea what's happening over in the schools? I mean, granted, I understand, the teachers have to be there, but admin staff and so forth, have they done any furloughs or anything, or we just don't know yet?
I don't have the answer to that. I do know that the superintendent had made early discussions with me about looking at areas that don't necessarily involve teaching and support directly in the classroom, because if they go down that slope of furloughing and then trying to bring back those kinds of people in the classroom, it represents some very big challenges. But I do know the superintendent had committed to me to look more closely at her staffing and where they may think it might be. Now with the, push out to the school year ending and not knowing exactly how they're going to address the issues that now may be presented to them in September, I do think that will become much more focal point for the superintendent going forward.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Madam Town Manager. The last thing I'd like to say, Mr. Chairman, is, I think it's a shame that, due to this pandemic, we do have to cancel the Memorial Day Parade. I think that's something that this town has always supported wholeheartedly. It's a shame that we do have to cancel it. I mean, I'd like to encourage any and all residents, whether they live on Main Street or whether they live in other parts of the town, to continue to show their support to our veterans and our armed forces, and feel free to display the flag and do whatever they feel that they need to do to, even though there won't be a parade on Main Street, our hearts and our thoughts will be with all of the armed forces and certainly the people who have passed as a result of that. And I think it would be a wonderful thing if everyone could find a way to give some sort of tribute to those people, even though we're not going to be able to hold that parade. So, and that's all I had. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I have to agree with you. I had thought, wouldn't it be great if every resident in this town put a flag in their yard, for Memorial Day, even if it's just some little, the little flags or something, just
I do.
I agree with you there.
Or even a drawing, a drawing to put in the window, anything.
Yep. Agreed. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Selectman Triano.
I just have a few things. I promise I'll keep it quick because I know that it's late. I wanted to echo also Cheryl's thoughts on Memorial Day. It's sad that we have to call off the ceremonies. I'm hoping that we are able to maybe do something later once we're able to go back to a somewhat normal society, because I do think that it's important to celebrate Memorial Day. But I mean, it shouldn't be limited to just one day. We should be grateful every day for those that have given their lives and honored the sacrifice. I'm also a bit disappointed, I wanted to say, about missing the ceremony for the fallen officers as well. Last year, Chief Sad put on a great ceremony at the police station, and I was looking forward to going again this year. So I'm a bit disappointed that we won't be able to honor those officers as well, but just know that they'll always be in our thoughts as we go on day to day. And again, I feel like I sound like a broken record every week saying it, but I again just want to give my deep gratitude and thanks to our healthcare workers, first responders, everyone that's out there day in and day out, putting their lives on the line to get us through this pandemic. And to those of you that don't think that this is real and don't think that it's serious, talk to a healthcare worker, talk to somebody that's out there dealing with it every day. The hospitals are overrun with it. People are dying without their families with them. People are being laid to rest without their families around them. It's affecting people. You may not realize it, but it's there and it's real. And we really need to, even though this warm weather is coming, continue social distancing as much as possible. Wear your masks. I know they stink. It's terrible to go grocery shopping with them, but we all have to do our part so that we make it out together on the other side. So just thank you to everybody. We have a great town. I'm proud to be a part of Oxford. Our first responders, our police department, our fire department, our DPW, our town hall. Jen, you're doing a great job. So everybody keep up the great work, and we'll get through it. That's all.
Very good. And so true, Megan. For those people that think that we should open up the whole country tomorrow, I said to my wife last week, if it were them that got sick or one of their loved ones that had to die from this and they couldn't say goodbye, their attitude would change a lot, and you're so true about that it's real and people should just realize that. But thank you very much. Mike, you're next, please.
Good evening. In regards to Memorial Day, just want to say thank you to Selectmen Sad and the rest of the veterans that are going to be going out and decorating the graves. Memorial Day has been celebration of those that have sacrificed since Civil War time. Used to be called Decoration Day, I think it was, where people would go out and decorate the graves of these service members that paid the ultimate sacrifice. So it's really rough for us as a town to have to cancel the events of that day. And the recognition that we give those citizens that paid that sacrifice. But as a town, there's nothing saying that our citizens cannot go out to the cemeteries, especially if it's a nice day out, and just take a look at all the graves that are going to be decorated with the American flags. Take a moment of silence and continue. Even though the town isn't doing anything official this year in regards to a parade or anything like that, take the time yourself individually to recognize and pay your respects to those that have sacrificed. Unfortunately, COVID-19 is still, it's still a real thing. It's here. So just continued thank you to everybody who's working very hard, making their own personal sacrifices to keep everybody else safe. And that's all I have for tonight.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mike. Selectman Sad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question to the town manager. This is in regards to the DPW. I've been asked by several residents if priorities are going to be changed because of the COVID-19 as far as the DPW is concerned, there were a list of priorities that were presented by the DPW director, the road repairs and such. Is that still on schedule?
As far as I know, if there are major construction items that are contracted out that are not done by our local DPW, whether it's Harwood Street or Sacarapa, those projects are still moving in the direction that they have whatever major construction timetable that they're on. There have been some pauses in it. If the construction company thought they couldn't do their own social distancing. But as far as our local DPW projects, yes, we have a timetable for a number of things, and that right now they're ramping up for those kinds of things, whether it's executing the closure of certain grants that we've gotten over the past year, like the Jocelyn Park grant, where they're going to be putting in park benches. Those kinds of things are still moving forward, along with a number of other things. What I could do is I can most certainly talk to our DPW director, who's also been burning the candle at both ends, like many of us, and ask him to maybe give a memo for an update for a number of projects that he sees that will be on track. Would that be helpful, Selectman Sad?
Yes, it would. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think so too. Okay, we'll do that for the next meeting.
The other thing I have is I know that the manager in her report had recognized the assessor's office for the fine job that they've done in dealing with the public during this very difficult time, not only because of the pandemic, but obviously because of the change in the technology, which was a big change for us. But in light of that, I would be remiss if I didn't mention other employees in offices that deal face to face with the public on a daily basis. I've been in the town hall time and time again and watched how people at the town clerk's office deal with people, the collector's office, the assessor's office, the selectman's office. I can go on and on. The offices upstairs. Our people treat people with respect and with courtesy. They really do. And you can hear this when you walk by, when they're talking to people, how they ask, how they deal with people's questions. They do it in a very concerning manner. I think we're very lucky to have employees that are out front dealing with the public, that deal with them in the manner that they do. And that's a tribute to their department heads, because you don't see this in every community. I mean, I've gone into other communities to get a birth certificate or get this and that, and it's very snippy from a lot of people. Not all, but there are certain departments that just want to, what can I do for you? And that's it. Our people are so personable and show that they're willing to deal with people and answer their questions. And I really want to salute each and every one of those people that deal with the public from our town hall and our municipal buildings, because they deserve to be complimented. They really do. The other question that I have is in regards to the furloughs. I think it's a great gesture that we're able to carry people's insurance while they're out. Question to the manager: How long can we do this? Can we do it for 6 months? Can we do it just to the end of the fiscal year, or can we go beyond that? And I think these are questions that probably those who are furloughed would like to know. They don't know how long the furlough is going to last to begin with. So if it were me, I'd want to know how long is my family going to be covered by insurance.
Right. I think, you know, one of the things that we discussed with employees were recognizing that this is at least till the end of the fiscal year. And then also, once we get some better indications for what and how we'll be able to proceed going forward with government buildings opening, you wouldn't believe some of the questions people have. You know, are we going to still have the same level of service that we had prior to the pandemic? Things are already in motion for changing how we actually offer, say, library services, and we have computers that the public would come in and use and you know, readily access. And they're already thinking about, okay, what kind of measures would we have to put in place for sanitizing in between different types of people? There's just a whole notion of many questions that people have. But as far as, you know, how long the furloughs would last, when I spoke to each one of the employees, we talked about it being until such further notice, but recognizing that it would at least go to June 30th. And then we, of course, have to vote on a budget for next year, and depending on what we also receive for financial pictures and forecasting from the state is going to determine how we actually proceed with our budget going to next year. So I'd like to be able to say, you know, when we have more definitive idea of how many people we might have to keep on furlough or how many we can bring back, that may allow us to extend out. The one thing that I would also say, Mr. Sad, is that even the federal government is looking to create supportive mechanisms for people who are out on extended furlough for COBRA payments and the like. Obviously, when we bring back employees, which is our hope, is that we would be able to offer a timetable because we're picking up their premiums to allow them to be there. And those will be things that we'll work out. But honestly, I get it that people are wondering how long we're going to do that for. My hope is that because we're not terminating positions at this point, that we'll be able to do it at a manner that allows us with the hope of bringing these employees back. And so, you know, to tell you honestly, we might have furloughed people earlier if we thought we were going to get through this pandemic. I mean, if we thought the pandemic was going to last as long as it has, because many of us didn't necessarily think that those orders and closures were going to be taking place for as long as they have. But it's the reality of the way that the virus has spread in Massachusetts and what we've been contending with. So, but, you know, I hope to have a better, more clearer understanding of that as we go forward. And we not only set our next budget, but also get some better financial forecasts. In your packet, I mentioned that report that came out from the Chairman of Ways and Means. If you haven't looked at it, take a look at the historical context slides, because they basically have said when you go back to 2009 and 2010 during the back-to-back recessions, those were some of the worst collection years for the state. They lost $4 billion over 2 years. They're anticipating that alone in less than a year's time, because of the pandemic, we're going to eclipse that in less than a year. So $4 billion over 2 years and a loss of more than $4 billion in state collections and revenue projections is a very scary prospect for all of us until we actually understand whether the federal government will help support the local and state revenue figures, or whether we're going to be able to count on some other kinds of relief packages. We just don't know. And that's why I know Selectman said you have been urging all of us to be cautious financially. We are doing that. And I'm taking very seriously those financial projections as we go forward. And hopefully we'll have some better understanding of what that is once the state legislature also decides where it's going to come in terms of creating the necessary revenue that we require to support our local municipalities.
The other concern that I have is, I know that a lot of the states across this nation are having a problem with their unemployment services and the timeliness of people being able to get approved and able to get actual money from the unemployment office. I don't know how Massachusetts stands at this point. I don't know if we're in one of those states that are behind the 8 ball as far as unemployment is concerned, but I do have a concern about people getting their last check from the town of Oxford in that gap to when they're going to get their unemployment checks. A lot of people have families and they live from paycheck to paycheck. And I have a concern for those people. Do you have any indication of what the unemployment situation looks like or how it's moving along in this state?
So I've talked with our HR director, who's been in touch with the Division of Unemployment Insurance. A lot of ours has gone online and been automated at the state level. And from what I'm understanding is that they're pretty responsive once employees have a definitive date for furlough. One of the things that I thought was important is that we gave people a full 2 weeks pay so that their next pay period, which would be, because we pay bi-weekly, which would be in another 2 weeks, would give ample time to file immediately with unemployment insurance, which is an online thing. And I have, from what I understand, including direct contact that the HR specialist has had, that they've been extremely responsive. And what will happen is if somebody has had a reduction in hours as part of their furlough, that even those people are eligible and they go on a weekly basis on a Sunday. If someone has not worked, they put in the number of hours that they have not worked, that they would have worked, and that immediately gets logged in. I'm also hearing that the additional $600 that the federal government has kicked in has also just automatically gone to the calculation that the unemployment division has put forward. But I have not heard that. I think initially they were concerned about maybe the backlog, but I have not heard that that is continuing. I've heard that they've been quite responsive. I think everybody, even in the state level, knows that that's really, really important. And so I think in Massachusetts, we have a much better handle on that than in some other states.
Oh, I hope so, because I would hate to see anybody go without, with that lag period. When now is the time you really need to have that money coming into a household.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, my final thing is, I just wanted to mention again, and you all have brought it up, is in regards to Memorial Day, and I agree with Selectman Daniels. If you get a chance to go to the cemetery, it doesn't have to be on Memorial Day, but sometime during those few days around Memorial Day, to do it. And on that day itself, if you could just pause for a moment and remember those who have given their supreme sacrifice. The day is not going to go without being recognized. Maybe not the way we're accustomed to it with the celebrations, but I think the respect end of it and the honoring end of it is there. And it's going to continue to be there if we all participate in our own way. Doesn't have to be done in a group setting. I think we can each individually honor and respect those who have given themselves so that we could live in a nation that we live in today. So I just want to say I appreciate everyone's concern for Memorial Day and the situation that it's at hand, that we can't do the celebrating. But you know what? We'll bounce back after this, and we got Veterans Day coming up in another 6 months, and maybe we can add to the festivities of that. Maybe we will be in a position where we can have public displays in honoring our veterans. But until then, we can only do what's expected of us individually. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, John. It is, this whole pandemic is such a downer. So many things have lost, from a birthday party to Memorial Day, graduations, so on and so forth. But I think, as we have all said, it would be a very discredit to those that have given time in the service, or especially those that gave the ultimate sacrifice, that we don't, at least, as John, you said, just take a moment, and thank God, for those people. We are very fortunate to this day because of them. The only thing I had, Jen, is for whatever it's worth, being the teacher of so many years, I was in charge of many a graduation for many years. And if I don't know what they can do for a graduation, but the thought of having a later one down the road, maybe, the end of June or July sometime, I would hope the school committee is thinking that there are always those individuals in a class that will do anything to disrupt everything. And especially when it comes to graduation, the only thing, when I was running them, the only really thing we had over individuals' heads is the fact that if you weren't getting that diploma, or you were going to have to do some extra curricular activity if you disturbed graduation ceremony. So I would hope in their endeavor to do whatever they can for the seniors, because I definitely feel bad for them. Because like I said, I've dealt with many graduation. It's a special time for the seniors, but I would just hope they would think about that, because you get some of these individuals, as I'll call them, that will do anything. So maybe you could just send that little tidbit for whatever it's worth to them. I'm sure they're thinking about it, but I do. I feel bad for them as I do for many people, especially, I've dealt with a few people that have passed away due to this pandemic, and it's not an easy thing when you're standing at a cemetery and you cannot hug, and you cannot, you just can't give that condolence to those people. It's heart wrenching. So I hope people in America, have a little bit of a clue and don't push this too much. And with that, I would also say to my fellow board members, please stay safe. Keep doing what you're doing. It's great to see your beautiful faces. And really have a very honorable Memorial Day, and give credit where credit's due in that regards. So that's all I have. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make that motion.
I second that motion.
And I'll call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in affirmative, we're adjourned. Thanks a lot. Great meeting.
Thank you, everyone.